Jason Gilbo here at jgilbo11, breaking down today's pitchers on DraftKings and FanDuel. Overall, for a second slate on the opening season, I mean, not a ton to love right off the bat. I mean, we do have some above average names like Jake Arrieta, Johnny Cueto, Lance McCullers, Carrasco, but I mean, nothing in terms of safety that you really like a whole ton. But breaking into the first game here, Yankees and Rays, Jake Odorizzi, CC Sabathia. Basically a pick on there on the Trop, which, I mean, a couple homers early on, but typically plays more towards the pitchers than it does the hitters. CC Sabathia, not a guy that I'm particularly interested in right now. Just a guy who, yes, had some better games last year, did pitch to more, contact, and obviously got more ground balls last year, but still not a guy that I'm particularly in love with. Peripheral stats say the downgrade's still coming. Did miss some bats, was relatively around the plate, but for the most part, I'm still kind of staying away from Sabathia, even at his cheaper price tag. I like some of the Rays righties. As far as Odorizzi goes, Odorizzi's a guy who does struggle more against right-handed bats than he does against lefties. With that being said, I still don't love Odorizzi. I still think there's enough right-handed power for me that I think he gets hit hard around a little bit more. He's a fly ball pitcher. Strikeout upside, not particularly great in this matchup, unless you can really get going on the back half. But a guy still who gave up a near 34% hard contact rate. Odorizzi's not really a guy that I'm particularly thrilled with. I just think with the value in the bats in this game, I much prefer to go with them over the pitchers because of the late game with the Angels and A's and their pricing of pitchers. I'd rather go that. I feel like it's a much safer target. I don't even think in GPP consideration that these two arms really make sense. Rockies Brewers, this is another one where Tyler Anderson, not that bad. Zach Davies, not really a fan. I won't be looking to use him. Anderson's a guy, yes, he did pitch relatively well last year and induce a lot of weak contact, decent swinging strike rate, 10.7%, 20.7% strikeout rate. Is he going to get a couple Ks today? Certainly is. Keeps the ball on the ground, average home runs per 9. I'm looking at the Brewers lineup. I still feel like it's a tough one to get through. Overall, it's just, Villar, Braun, Hernan Perez, Domingo Santana. It's just a lot of right-handers to get through. And I just feel like in Miller Park, yes, this guy pitches in Coors still. It's still a bit tough for me to get on board. I think a lot of the offense is going to fall within this game. So Keon Broxton's another one. I'm just loading up on right-handed bats here where I feel like there's a lot to get through. I think it's going to be a little bit tougher on Anderson, even though I do think he's a solid lefty. And Davies is a guy that I'm just really not touching. Yes, Colorado bats are away from Coors. Yes, the top half of the lineup didn't do much yesterday. But you look at really Blackman and Cargo came in and faced a lefty for most of the day, which was kind of unexpected. But looking at that offense, I think that's where you're going to find most of it today. Neither of those guys are really on my radar. Cleveland, Texas, Carlos Carrasco, Martin Perez. Martin Perez, no thank you. Sure, he may go out and throw 5 or 6 innings and 2-3 earned runs. It's nothing sexy. I don't want any part of it. As far as Carrasco goes, Vegas predicting Texas for under 4 runs. We saw them explode off Kluber yesterday, mainly Odor. It's a good hitters environment, Texas. Carrasco's a guy who I do like a lot. Did give up a 36% hard contact rate last year, but I do think that's going to kind of come back down a little bit more. XFIP CR, very good for Carrasco. Did give up some homers, more than I'd like last year. This is a guy who's also relatively around the strike zone, 5.7% walk rate. Does miss bats, 25% K percentage. So I do like Carrasco. I think he's a great GPP target for me because I do think people are going to hop on the Rangers and you can kind of go against it. but it's just more of a tournament play. I don't think he's going to find his way into cash game considerations tonight. Still a tough lineup to get through. This is one where you kind of could see two sides of the coin, just given the fact that Texas' lineup is so deep and they're playing in Texas, where they did hit very well last year and had noticeable home-away offensive splits. So it's kind of high risk, high reward to really toss in tournaments. That's pretty much it, though. The one thing you can make for Carrasco, I mean, K percentage was pretty average against right-handed pitching last year for Texas, 324 WOBA. So, that's about it for me. Moving on here, you got Seattle and Houston, and Lance McCullers is probably going to be the hot topic of the day. Sashi Iwakuma on the other side, guy I don't want any part of. I'm stacking against Iwakuma tonight. You just look at what Iwakuma did last year. About a 33% hard contact rate, wasn't missing bats at all, 7.8% swinging strike rate. Ground ball rate was really low, 1.27 home runs per 9. Out of Safeco, in Minute Maid, I'm staying away here. I like this Houston offense. I like the fact that, they've added Brian McCann and Beltran and Reddick in the back half. That's the back half of that lineup. You're getting Correa, Bregman, Springer, Altuve in your top four. This is just going to be a really tough lineup to get through. And yes, the strikeout rates are still going to be there, but Iwakuma not a strikeout pitcher anymore. I'm definitely looking at the Astros hard tonight. Talking about McCullers, though, this is a guy who, God, you want to love a ton with a 30% strikeout rate. Gives up a lot of weak contact, heavy ground ball pitcher. I mean, everything's really there. And then you get to the walk rate at 13%, and it makes you just go, oh, man. He's a guy who, it could just only go 4 or 5 innings, but strike out 8 or 9 guys, and kind of leave you hanging. But that's kind of the thing. He limits home runs per 9, 383 BABIP last year. So obviously still further positive regressions coming for McCullers. I like him a ton. I mean, you look at the Seattle offense, that's another part of it. It is good, certainly. I mean, 326 WOBA against right-handers last year, 170 ISO, average strikeout rate. But you look at McCullers, and he pitched really well against Seattle in 2 outings. That's one thing to consider if you're looking at just kind of a history. You look at McCullers and his strikeout rate and just go, oh, man, the upside's really there on the slate where, outside of Cueto and Maeda and Arrieta, I mean, Carrasco, I mean, there's not a ton of real aces going. So I like the upside here. I'll definitely have some tournament shares. I'm not going to be able to do it in cash games just with that walk rate. And the floor is still really low. So you make the cases for him. You can make the cases against him. I don't think it's going to be a real blow up of the fact where he gives up maybe 500 or 600 runs. I just think the possible walk rate might get him into a little bit higher trouble. And unless he's really just walking and then striking out guys after it, the upside really might not be there if he only goes 5 and the walk rate's an issue. So do note that, but McCullers is a tournament option tonight. Chicago, St. Louis, Jake Arrieta, Adam Wainwright. Arrieta coming in tonight as a solid option. There is weather concerns in this one. It's 11:30 Eastern, so keep an eye on that. As of now, it's looking a little bit iffy, but Jake Arrieta, if things clear out, I do like him here. I think you look at St. Louis, and yes, they were a top half offense. Did have a decent strikeout rate against right-handers to target against. Looking at this, I mean, looking at the lineup, really post-Carpenter against right-handers, I'm not afraid of targeting righties against them. I mean, I just look Peralta, Molina, Piscotty, Grichuk, Colton Wong. And then obviously you get Adam Wainwright. I'm sure Wainwright can handle that. But, I think the only guys you really worry about is Fowler, Diaz, and Carpenter at this point. So low total there for St. Louis. You look at Arrieta last year, the walk rate's up. You're probably going to hear that elsewhere. Still a 24% strikeout rate. You also just look at Arrieta, solid ground ball rate still. I mean, outside of that, I just can't think he's going to run into too much trouble. I think the weather's the only issue. So I don't mind Arrieta here. I can see the Cubs getting him some run support off of Wainwright, who I don't think is going to blow up like everyone's expecting, but I don't think he's going to be viable. Wainwright's just kind of lost that upside as an appeal. Struggled against lefties last year, so getting guys like Schwarber, Rizzo, Zobrist, Hayward, who I know has been god awful over the last year. it's going to be a little bit tough. And in Busch Stadium, obviously a better pitcher's park, especially early on in the season. Jake Arrieta registers as one of the better arms to pay up for, weather permitting. San Francisco and Arizona. Johnny Cueto, another one. Patrick Corbin. You look at Cueto. I mean, he pitched well against Arizona last year. Bad ballparks never tend to really phase Cueto. I mean, he pitched at Great American Ballpark for basically his career. And looking at Arizona, yes, Pollock, Goldschmidt, Lamb, Tomas are all dangerous threats. David Peralta as well. Basically, if they kind of load that up, and maybe you get the other Hernan there as the other catcher. I mean, who hit righties pretty well. Mixing in guys like Owings and Tomas, whose strikeout rate is still high, and Drury and Mathis, and having Peralta hit in the bottom half of the lineup, it's not as intimidating. But given Chase Field, given this is still some dangerous bats, Cueto's not as safe as you'd like to think tonight. I do think he gets through a relatively decent outing, but I do look for more upside out of that price tag. And Cueto's not really a strong strikeout guy. 22.5%, still missing bats above 9%. It's not bad. Doesn't give up homers, which you like to see, 0.61 home runs per 9 for Cueto. But that's about it for me. I think Cueto's a reasonable option. If you're looking to kind of go that route, I'm curious to see what his ownership's going to be tonight. I don't think it's going to be high. I also don't think it's going to be low. Overall, I just think we're going to get to a game here. We're going to get to another guy later on where I don't mind using him. Patrick Corbin on the other side. I talked about him on the GPP pod. Basically, a guy that I'm going to keep an eye on in this matchup. San Francisco has a couple righties they can plug in off the bench now, so I'm curious to see how that lineup shapes up. Pence and Posey still a problem. Eduardo Nunez as well. Corbin, very cheap on both sides, but I think I'm going to take the night off and just kind of wait and see how he pitches, because this is a guy who did pitch really well before Tommy John. So I like Corbin. He's going to be in some decent spots where I'm going to take some shots on him this year, but tonight's probably not going to be one of them. Los Angeles and Oakland, Sean Manaea, Matt Schumacher, both guys under 4 total for opposing team totals. Both offenses very similar, except one doesn't have Mike Trout. Basically, you look at Oakland. This is not really a powerhouse team outside of really Chris Davis, who's coming off a 2-homer game, and Schumacher. He's probably the only guy that I'll consider. But you look at Schumacher. I mean, Oakland, a mediocre 148 ISO against righties last year. 19% strikeout rate is not anything to write home about. 302 WOBA is something that I do like. So I definitely don't mind using Schumacher here tonight. I think he's a safe option. And I like Schumacher a lot because you look at his numbers. Sierra, everything was really 315 BABIP is still probably going to be on the rise down. He's a fly ball pitcher, but I don't mind that in Oakland. Strikeout rate, 21.4%. Doesn't walk a lot of guys, 4.5%. Mediocre hard contact rate allowed. So Schumacher in a good spot. I like him on both sides. He's a really strong SP2 tonight. On FanDuel, I think he's in line for the quality start, which makes him solid. And kind of looking at yesterday's scoring, a lot of guys were kind of put into play at younger at cheaper salaries because they got the other guys didn't get the win. We didn't see Strasburg get the win. We didn't see Syndergaard get the win. I mean, Kershaw was your safe bet, but was obviously priced up. Rick Porcello wasn't a strong option to his price tag, and it kind of made cheaper guys more playable. So, looking at Schumacher at 8K on FanDuel, I'm okay with it if you want to load up on some bats. So, Manaea, on the other hand, I do like him a lot as a pitcher. I think this is a breakout spot for him. Probably won't be touching him on FanDuel. He pitched really well down the stretch last year. And the Angels still do not scare me. Mediocre WOBA. The ISO's really not there. I mean, the only possible power threats that you have is basically CJ Cron, Pujols, Mike Trout. Cole Calhoun can get it popping every now and then. But outside of that, I mean, Escobar, yes, a fine right-handed bat, but not anything that you're going to jump out for power. Espinoza, sure, has got some pop at a big strikeout rate. Simmons, not a big hitter. Revere. Maldonado, I mean, it's not a strong lineup here. This is still Angels team that's going to be very mediocre offensively. Work around their big bats, and you're going to just be fine. Manaea, a fine SP2 on DraftKings. I think you can go that way. I think you can plug them in both together if you want really stack some bats. I do like quite a bit. So I think he's going to find himself this year. He did last year down the stretch. I like him a lot. Don't love the matchup, particularly just because the Angels don't strike out a ton. Upside not really there, but I do think he's a safe option. Padres and Dodgers, Kenta Maeda take on Clayton Richard. Richard, no thank you. This guy rarely lasts over 5 innings. Coming up, I know Dodgers struggled against lefties last year, but adding Logan Forsythe, adding Franklin Gutierrez, if Yasiel Puig can find his way to hitting well. I know Justin Turner obviously hits righties better than lefties, but it's still a solid right-handed bat in the middle of that lineup to get through. Richard's just not a guy that you can look at tonight. Maeda, on the other hand, definitely don't mind him. I don't love it, but you're looking, he's probably going to be the higher owned cash game option. People are still going to plug him away in GPPs. You look at San Diego, I mean, near quarter strikeout rate against right-handed pitching last year, 291 WOBA, which ranked dead last. Played Clayton Kershaw, obviously. I don't think this lineup is, an auto fade. I talked about a possible Padres stack on the GPP pod, and I'll talk about them on the stacking pod as well. I like San Diego. I think the lineup's fun, and fun's a weird word to describe a lineup, but I mean, there is some potential here. I do think Maeda reasonably gets through this one, though. I mean, if you play this game 10 out of 10 times, probably 7 out of them, you're looking at Maeda a really strong start. So I like him tonight. I think he's a safe option. Minus 2A, he's probably going to go out and get the quality start and get a win as well. So I'm fine with using him in cash. I'm okay with fading him in GPPs, though. Yes, he did have a big monster strikeout game against San Diego last time out. But you look, as he kind of went deeper into the season, figured out a little bit more, didn't see a ton of high strikeout games, doesn't go tremendously deep into games. Looking at Maeda here, I mean, only averaged 5.39 innings per game last year. So that's a little bit of a concern. So if you look at everyone else, basically, Cueto was the one who lasted the longest. You had guys like Jake Arrieta, CC Sabathia lasted a little bit of 6, but not touching him. So that's going to wrap it up here. The pitching polls, you can check out dailyfantasycafe.com, our complete revamped optimizer for this year. A lot of new tools, Stack January, all that good stuff. And check out our tools and cheat sheets as well.